Well, first, this is not the malevolence of the Trump administration. It's not forced family separation on purpose to be cruel. And so I agree with the secretary that this is an improvement over the years of Donald Trump and Stephen Miller and their administration. But you got to call a spade a spade. And I've told this to the secretary personally that I disagree with some of the policies that the Biden administration is keeping in place. The fact is that some of these folks who we should be allowing to stay in the United States with their families while they wait for their asylum claims to be processed, instead are going to be left in Mexico with the cartels. So you're either going to leave them with the cartels and all the dangers that they may face of murder, rape, kidnapping, and so forth, or you're going to allow them to stay in the United States with their families while their claims are processed. So I disagree with some parts of the Biden administration's policy, but let's be clear, Joe Biden is not Donald Trump, and his administration does not have a Stephen Miller. They're not separating families. They're not doing a lot of the outright, almost intentional cruelty of the Trump administration.
Listen, Republicans wanted us to believe that they wanted to keep Title 42 in place. And I think there is some sense that they actually hope that this behooves them politically, right? The lifting of Title 42, because it allows them to sell that false narrative that you outlined for me at the beginning. And I wonder, given that I think you and I agree the solution here has to be legislative, the solution has to go through Congress, if there is any appetite on their part to actually sit down and get this done, or if they feel they benefit politically from what is happening at our border right now.
I have not seen widespread appetite within the Republican conference in the House of Representatives to do anything real or reasonable on immigration or on reforming the asylum process. There are a few voices within their Republican conference who I think want to do something and who are reasonable and who don't give in necessarily to the hysteria of the day or the cruelty of the day. But those voices are largely unsupported within the broad Republican conference. And look, and I do want to say one thing about the Biden administration or any president. A president is not able to do all of this stuff alone. Yep. So if I was in the Biden administration, I would be very frustrated as well that Congress can't get its act together, that you have a Republican House of Representatives and Republicans in the Senate who are just unwilling to do anything on these issues because Donald Trump made it the bread and butter fear-mongering issue for the Republican base. And it's hard to operate in that environment if you're a Republican who actually wants to get something done.
Well, and what happens also in that void is that you have state leaders, Republicans like Texas Governor Greg Abbott, your governor, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, doing things like relocating migrants to blue cities, pushing restrictive immigration policies. And it would seem that actually further complicates the picture, right? The fact that they are pushing these things at the end of the day are political stunts, not actually policies aimed at providing solutions.
It's red meat. Greg Abbott, DeSantis, some of these other folks, they keep trying to figure out how to continue to feed the red meat to a primary base that has been primed to believe that all of these people who are showing up to claim asylum are here to hurt Americans. So they got to keep doing different things to feed that story and feed that impulse. And with Greg Abbott, you saw him ship all these people to different places, really some people who were duped into going, who were promised jobs and clothes and so forth. But he's got to do that because he thinks that's what he has to do to win his Republican primary.